Tick tock, minute to walk. Your silence breeds complacency. Tick tock, minute to walk.
Hello everybody, this is Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey cases, but also as time passes I've been covering other cases such as the Staircase or OJ and many wrongful convictions of youth. I go over the documents, the photos, the videos, anything case related, so stay tuned because I have many more videos just like the one you're about to see. Hello there everybody, how you doing today? We're here today to talk a little bit about a couple things here that I'm going to show you. I may talk about a few others, but things that when I look at, these are clips of basically footage of like, well, for instance, one's going to be of Mark Rohr, the other's going to be like Ken Kratz and Jerry at trial. But anyway, these things to me illustrate how different branches of, you know, Wisconsin law enforcement, judiciary, seem to just go along with what Manitowoc started in 1985. Whether they were doing it at that point because it had become such a mess and they didn't want it to blow up and they were just trying, everybody was trying their best to minimize it. Whatever everybody's motivations were, it's to me clear that there were many kind of different agencies that were trying to obscure it, minimize it, and do those sort of things. The first clip I'm going to show you is, it's Stephen Avery's attorneys at deposition, and they're interviewing Mark Rohr. And in terms of, this is in regards to Stephen Avery's civil suit for the, you know, the $36 million civil suit. And they're asking Mark Rohr about the information that was given to the AG's office. Now, for those of you who may not know or remember, originally, the Attorney General's office in Wisconsin did an investigation into what happened with the 1985 investigation into the Penny Burnson rape and attempted murder. So they did an investigation into that to try to figure out what went wrong and how Stephen Avery was wrongfully convicted. And they actually, after all that, basically Peg Lautenschlager comes back with a answer that basically is that it was a breakdown of communication. And that's why it happened, which is complete BS. But there's another little wrinkle that gets added. Okay? We have number one, the state seems to sign off on what happened in 1985 when it's very clear, no matter what, even without the information that Rohr and Griesbach failed to hand over, even without that information, it's pretty damn clear that there was something pretty obvious going on with the 1985 case. Okay, that's, I mean, really obvious. So for the state to sign off that, oh, it was no big deal and it was breakdown of communication is ridiculous. But then you find out here that Mark Rohr, who was working with Michael Griesbach, you guys know who Michael Griesbach is. He was the guy that was helping Stephen get out of prison, who was helping Stephen Avery get exonerated for the 1985 case and all that stuff. He was helping Stephen and all that. He was the one that was supposedly trying to push this up to the state and get them to investigate it, right? Okay, so he was trying to collect the information so that he could send it to the AG's office so that a proper investigation could be done, and he was supposed to be sending all of his information. Well, let's just take a quick look at this and we'll come on back.
So they cost Stephen Avery 8 years of his life. This is as close to a conspiracy of silence as I think you could find in a case.
Did you provide this information to the Attorney General's office?
Yes, my recollections is I believe we did.
And who's we?
Mike Griesbach and I when we went to Madison.
Well, but this memo was drafted after you had been to Madison.
I'm not sure the date we're in Madison.
You're saying you told that information to the Attorney General's office?
We passed everything we had obtained to the Attorney General's office.
Okay, well, neither this memo nor anything about Colburn and Link is in any of the records that were provided to the Attorney General's office. I can tell you that.
All right, so my first question for you is, what do you think of Michael Griesbach's claims now that he was actually trying to help Stephen prior to the Teresa Halbach thing? I mean, what do you think about those claims now? Right? Because these depositions were happening before what happened to Teresa. Okay? These depositions were happening before that. So there's no reason at the point of these depositions for Michael Griesbach to think that Avery has done anything wrong or anything. So how do we explain that somehow Michael Griesbach, who claims he was always trying to help Avery prior to the Teresa Halbach thing, forgets to send all the stuff about Colburn and the call that he got in 1995 and all that from Brown County, and they forget to send all that? How do you, I mean, are we supposed to believe that that's really innocent? I mean, it's like, you know, and then you take into account that Michael Griesbach ended up becoming Manitowoc County DA after this whole business with Stephen and Stephen getting exonerated and everything. Michael Griesbach ended up becoming Manitowoc County DA. Then we find out here from Mark Rohrer that we find out in the questioning of Mark Rohrer here that they never even sent the information about that call. I mean, that call of Colburn that he received in 1995, I mean, I've heard it try to be spun so many ways where they're like, oh, how do you expect him to know? It's just one phone call. How do you expect him to know who Stephen Avery is? You know, how could he know anything in 1995? You know, he was just some guy in the jail, and somebody was calling and saying they might have somebody there that was in, you know, jail, and they had somebody that was saying it was there that they had committed the crimes there in Brown County, which was Gregory Allen. They had Gregory Allen over there in Brown County. So I hear people spinning it, going, oh, well, how would Colburn even know, or whatever? I mean, there's so many, you know, inmates and criminals and everything, so how's he supposed to know which one? Well, that would be a fine, you know, argument, except that you have to take into account that 8 years later, the day after Stephen is released from prison, Colburn writes a, you know, incident report, basically, or whatever, about it. That tells you, if he did that 8 years later, literally the day after Stephen is released, that tells you that he recognized what it was back in 1995. Right? Yeah. So, anyway. The next thing we're going to go ahead and move into here is the whole thing about the deleted voicemails. Okay, this part kills me, because we know that Teresa's phone was being monkeyed with on in a time very critical to this case. And I've done another video for those of you who are going to try to say, oh, maybe her own automated system just deleted a few voicemails. Nope. That would be a fine argument if the phone hadn't been powered up, because the phone started ringing again. I have an entire video about it. I'll tell you what, I'll leave that video down below for you about that, and so that you can go see. Her phone had to be powered on the first, it was on the second, in the morning of the second, I believe, had to be powered on. And the reason why that we know it had to be powered on is because it had to be, in order for Singular, because Singular had stopped ringing the phone itself, it was just sending people straight to voicemail, and they were getting a message that it was full. But on the second, the phone started ringing again. Okay, in order for the phone to start ringing again, Singular had to sense the phone powered up and on the network in order for it to start ringing the phone again, instead of sending it straight to voicemail. Anyway, so that's just an interesting little fact here before we move into this little clip with Kratz and Buting, and obviously the infamous quote from Judge Willis about he doesn't see the relevance of these deleted voicemails and what was going on with this phone in a very, very critical time period in terms of this case. Yeah. So we'll play that one. Come on back.
So if your records show that on a certain date messages were opened all the way up to that date on Teresa Halbach's phone, that would mean that somebody had listened to those voice messages.
I'd like to be heard outside the presence of the jury. Mr. Kratz?
He's about to show her some retrieved voicemails on the 2nd. If Mr. Buting's position, if his theory of defense is that Teresa Halbach is alive on the 2nd of November, we're entitled to know that. We're entitled to notice of that. That's my objection, is that it's irrelevant.
Mr. Kratz may draw the conclusion that because messages are opened as of November 2nd, that means that Teresa Halbach was alive on that date. I don't. And I don't think the jury needs to either. But I do intend to introduce records that show that her voicemail was picked up at 8 a.m. on November 2nd. Something was going on with this phone in a very, very critical period of time for this trial, which is between October 31st and November 5th when her car was found, or November 3rd when she's reported missing.
How does that help this jury decide who killed her? That's what the jury's here to do, Judge.
Because unless the state's prepared to establish that Mr. Avery had her password, then he's not the one who's listening to her messages on Wednesday, November 2nd at 8 a.m. So and their theory is that he's already destroyed the phone.
Never said he was.
Somebody who knew her, somebody who may have had a motive that he doesn't have, and somebody who may have had opportunity was doing that.
Sounds like
I'm not suggesting that she was
third-party
still alive.
liability, Judge.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
I don't,
Now, I'm not going to argue that part to the jury because that's what the court says we're not going to do. But as far as what's relevant is the police have had this report, and the police have not followed up to find out what's up here.
does the state know who accessed the voicemail?
I suppose we, if there was an inkling that Mr. Buting was going to suggest that Ms. Halbach was alive at that time, this is something that could have been looked into investigatively. It's another thing that we could do, Judge, if the defense is changing its theory.
This is not changing the theory at all. This fits perfectly to show that they have not followed up this investigative lead because this investigative lead points elsewhere than Mr. Avery. And here we are in the middle of the trial and it hasn't been investigated. The jury has a right to know that.
All right, I'm, I guess, having trouble seeing the apparent relevance of it at this stage of the trial. Let's bring the jurors back in.
Yeah, don't get me started with what you're talking about, Willis, because, man, how do you not see the importance of the deleted voicemails in this time period? It's just bizarre to me. And when you're running a planting framing defense, I think that it's valid for the jury to hear that the prosecution in the state has just ignored that lead. I think it's important. I think Jerry Buting is exactly right. I think Judge Willis is again showing another branch of the state of Wisconsin, basically judiciary in this sense, that is going along with the BS. Okay? You can say what you like about the evidence in this case, but when you're talking about the leads that they left without even investigating, without even doing the slightest bit of investigation on, and those leads, I mean, it's obvious that these deleted voicemails, something was going on with this phone. As I told you, because the phone started ringing again, it'd been going straight to voicemail on the first. Okay, and that's what happened with it when you had a phone with Singular at the time. If you didn't have your phone powered on, after about 4 hours, if it didn't sense your phone's ID signal coming on, on the network, basically, it would stop ringing your phone and it would send people straight to voicemail without ringing. You would call the person and you basically would hear them. You would hear their message. Hello, yes, leave me a message. Thank you, bye. Right? That's it. That's what you would get. However, on the second, people started calling and it was ringing again. Okay? That means that the phone had been powered up. Singular had sensed it on the network. Right. So that's why these things are important. Judge Willis is an idiot, personally, in my opinion. But yeah, I just wanted to show a couple of these clips today because I think this is where, we see clearly that there are agents with knowledge of what was going on here. I mean, Colburn clearly knew what was going on, that call was about Stephen Avery. I mean, so much so that he actually wrote a report 8 years later, the day after Stephen Avery gets out of prison. So he clearly knew and understood what was happening, no matter how much people try to say he couldn't have in 95. I mean, it just doesn't make sense that he didn't understand what was going on in 95, because he literally wrote the report the day after Stephen got exonerated 8 years later. You know, so then you add the whole thing about these voicemails that got deleted, and the fact that Judge Willis didn't want the jury to be able to hear about that. You know, here's the defense running a planting and framing defense, and, you know, not leaving potential investigative leads unexplored. Well, yeah, that's kind of something that will happen when an agency is getting tunnel vision and focusing on one party and not investigating all leads. That's something that will happen. So the fact that Judge Willis can't see any of the many reasons why this was relevant tells me that he was drinking the prosecution of the state of Wisconsin's Kool-Aid, and he was on board. That's really what it tells me. So that's going to be about it for this video, folks. If you guys really want me to, and you want to talk about a few other things like this, let me know in the comments here. Maybe I'll go live if you guys really want me to. If it's too late and everybody's getting ready to go to bed, that's fine too. So let me know, and we'll see you. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe.
My name's Stacy Seabrook, and I approve Eric Jose on Making a Murderer to be able to use my songs on his channel. Thank you.
He's innocent. The day always comes if you're innocent.
Get on the train before it leaves the station. Wisconsin versus Avery, a complete fabrication. Get on the train before it leaves town. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down. And we all know Stephen and Brendan were blamed, but it does not take a brain surgeon to see that they were framed. And yes, we know what this was about. The civil suit, the settlement, they did not want to pay. I want to pay out. And you may hear this song, or maybe you don't get it. I suggest you look up TikTok, Manitowoc on Reddit. There you will find trial transcripts, evidence files, and reports, and you will start to fathom the corruption within the courts. And as you shake your head because everything seems demented, you will find yourself in company of 3 on-bank judges that dissented. But don't you worry, you're not going insane. You just happen to sit down on Zellner's Truth Train. Get on the train before it leaves the station. Final destination, inevitable exoneration. Get on the train before it leaves town. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down. Get on the train. Let me tell you about a story. Now we're Manitowoc bound, about their law enforcement, a right bunch of clowns, how they wear their badge like a plastic crown, how they're sticking to a story of which they are now bound. It's a rabbit hole they don't want you to go down, but over in Wisconsin they're doubling down. See, they framed them once, then they did it again. They did not count on filmmakers making MAM. They thought thought their lives were safe, all would buy the ruse. They did not figure on 19 million views. It'll make you shake your head and probably frown. But over in Wisconsin, they're doubling down. I said they'll double down, and they'll triple down. They're headed down a road which they cannot turn around. They walk around like they'll be home free, 'cause they control all the evidence on the local judges and found is the state's AG. But I got some news, it's as plain as day. It doesn't matter what the state or the guilters say, 'cause we got Kathleen, she's got them in her sights. She's a real live hero, turning wrongs to right. No matter how hard that state's gavel pounds, over in Wisconsin, they're coming down. I said no matter how hard that state's gavel pounds, their house of cards isn't coming down. It'll make you shake your head, probably frown. Said over in Wisconsin, they're coming down. Over in Wisconsin, they're coming down.